It's Monday, June 16th, 2025. A beautiful parade in D.C., a parade of missiles over Tel Aviv, and a parade of stupid in a city near you. Next on the AM Update.
America's enemies have learned that if you threaten the American people, our soldiers are coming for you. Your defeat will be certain. Your demise will be final.
We decided to act because we saw enough uranium, enriched uranium, for 9 bombs. And all they had to do was weaponize them. We stopped that.
We're here today because an unspeakable tragedy has unfolded in Minnesota.
I'm just so scared.
And you've got to start bending the cost curve down. And this does bend it down, literally for the first time in decades.
The finale of the Washington, D.C. military parade, celebrating the 250th birthday of the United States Army. President Trump addressed the crowd.
Time and again, America's enemies have learned that if you threaten the American people, our soldiers are coming for you. Your defeat will be certain, your demise will be final, and your downfall will be total and complete. Because our soldiers never give up, never surrender, and never, ever quit. They fight, 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 and they win, win, win.
It was a beautiful parade, a very moving parade at times, illustrating the U.S. Army's really evolution in 250 years. Of course, a lot of things happening around the rest of the world kind of cast a shadow on the day's events, including this. Israel, particularly Tel Aviv, withstood nights on end of missile barrages, ballistic missile barrages from Iran, as the war between the two nations intensifies, reaching its 3rd day. Some of those missiles, hypersonic missiles. By the way, quick aside, I've seen more high-definition video of this war from both Iran and Israel than I've seen of the entire Ukraine-Russia war. I'll just leave that right there. Strikes between the two heavily armed nations have grown increasingly deadly. Iran fired a barrage of drones and missiles at Israel as Israel expanded its targets in Iran. Iranian officials have opened the metro, mosques, and schools in Tehran to provide shelter as the Israeli military strikes targets across Tehran, the capital, although videos surfaced online purportedly showing a mass exodus from the Iranian capital. Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu of Israel updated Bret Baier on Fox News yesterday about the latest targets that Israel has eliminated.
We decided to act because we saw enough uranium, enriched uranium, for 9 bombs. And all they had to do was weaponize them. We stopped that. We're attacking their nuclear sites. We attacked their chief nuclear scientists working. It's like Hitler's nuclear scientists. Would you leave them? Of course not. We attacked their top command. I can inform you, Brett, that moments ago, we also got the chief intelligence officer and his deputy in Tehran, because we're now over the skies of Tehran. Our pilots, our brave pilots, are over the skies of Tehran, and we're targeting military sites, nuclear sites. That's what we're doing to take out those 2 threats. Unlike the Iranians, who your reporter said correctly, they're targeting our civilians. Yeah. They're bombing our civilians. So that's the difference. They're a terrorist regime. We can't have Iran have nuclear weapons. And by the way, our intel shows that they intend to give these nuclear weapons to their Houthi proxies and others. And that's nuclear terrorism on a global scale. It threatens everyone.
Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu reinforcing the message that the reason they attacked Iran when they did is that they were very close to actually completing a nuclear weapon. President Trump on Truth Social Sunday said, quote, "The U.S. had nothing to do with the attack on Iran tonight. That would have been Saturday night. If we are attacked in any way, shape, or form by Iran, they will feel the full strength and might of the U.S. armed forces and come down on you at levels never before seen. However, we can easily get a deal done between Iran and Israel and end this bloody conflict." In another post, President Trump echoed calls to come to the negotiating table, saying, quote, "Iran and Israel should make a deal, and it will make a deal just like I got India and Pakistan to make. In that case, by using trade with the United States to bring reason, cohesion, and sanity into the talks with 2 excellent leaders who were able to quickly make a decision and stop." He ended that message by saying, "Make the Middle East great again." So, I think we have dueling narratives here. It's pretty clear, given that Israel has air superiority, allegedly, over Tehran right now, and that they have taken out a lot of Iranian regime targets within Tehran. This is the capital of Iran. Okay, this is not nothing. These are not tiddlywinks we're talking about here. It seems to me that Israel's plan this time around, I said on Friday, this is the big one, the big looming showdown between Iran and the West, or Iran and Israel. I think that's coming to fruition. Because I think in Israel's view, from everything that I'm seeing and the very bold steps that they're taking, they are looking for regime change. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to call for a deal to be made. Maybe this is just a little good cop, bad cop. I'll have more thoughts on this entire saga on Air Analysis.
We're here today because an unspeakable tragedy has unfolded in Minnesota. My good friend and colleague, Speaker Melissa and her husband Mark, were shot and killed early this morning in what appears to be a politically motivated assassination.
That is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz addressing the media after two Minnesota Democrat state lawmakers were shot over the weekend. Around 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning, 911 dispatch received a call that State Senator John Hortman and his wife Yvette had been shot in Champlin, Minnesota. They were raced to the hospital where they underwent surgery and are expected to survive. Meanwhile, around 3:35 a.m., police proactively went to check on Representative Melissa Hortman, the former Speaker of the Minnesota House, and her husband Mark in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, less than 10 miles south of Champlin. Unfortunately, the Hortmans had both been fatally struck. Representative Hortman was 55 years old. The suspect in both the attempted and carried out assassination is Vance Bolter. This dude is weird. He has the biography and the resume of like a Jamaican. He's got 9 job man. This guy, the suspect, has been everything from a preacher, a charismatic preacher in the Congo, like in Africa, to leading some sort of nonprofit in Minnesota, to managing a 7-Eleven, and was currently running an armed security business. By the way, I think he used his armed security business to impersonate a police officer. That's part of this story. He impersonated a police officer in order to gain entry to these politicians' homes. Just a very bizarre and tragic story out of Minnesota. Oh, and one more thing. The congresswoman who was shot, the state congresswoman who was shot, she was the deciding vote in that vote I told you about last week in the Minnesota State House. She was the deciding vote to stop funding health care for illegal aliens in the state of Minnesota. Again, a bizarre story. Speaking of bizarre, here's Teachers Union Grand Poobah, Randi Weingarten, who is a walking, talking advertisement for homeschooling. She spoke at the Philadelphia No Kings protest. Here she is.
You are the community to this president's chaos. And together, we build a future of opportunity and justice for all. Hope over fear, aspiration over anger, the promise of America for each and every American.
She's waving her arms, flailing them about wildly. It was, check this out. What kind of commentary is it that I can say that it was a pleasant surprise over the weekend that we didn't have many riots, or at least any riots at all, in the aftermath or during these No Kings protests? And we only had one shooting that I heard of that was, of all places, Salt Lake City. It's a pleasant surprise that these protests didn't turn into riots. There were skirmishes sprinkled about here and there, but again, no widespread violence. However, what I did see at these No Kings protests, largely geriatrics. A lot of geriatrics showed up to these protests, including this woman who spoke to Fox News.
I'm just so scared. I'm 74 years old. I worry about everything, and I just am so scared and upset, and I don't understand why people voted for this person.
Get a freaking grip, Grandma, and turn off MSNBC. That is just ridiculous. And it's sad. It's sad that these news networks absolutely poison the minds of people like this. 74 years old. Go spend time with your grandkids. Turn off the news. Go touch grass. Yeah, we're pretty polarized as a country. We're not that polarized. You don't need to weep to a stranger about how you're scared. Turn off the television. If that's your parents or grandparents, turn it off for them. Do them a favor. When we come back, I think the big, beautiful bill is going to pass, and I'll tell you why. Also, is Trump on the brink of a generational sellout? Well, there are some reports that indicate that is maybe the case. We'll talk about that as well. And AI has gone too far. Talk about that next.
The answer is yes. You know what? I don't care. I don't care about my. I am married. I am legally married.
A Los Angeles news reporter went on a bizarre, booze-loving, heartbroken rant during a live chopper broadcast of local No Kings protests on Saturday. Stu Mundell, a longtime helicopter reporter for Fox 11 Los Angeles, had a live therapy session about his separation from his wife and feelings for bourbon.
And, you know... But, I got nothing right now. Got nothing, not really looking. Trying to find myself and be happy. I'm being serious about that.
Mundell's personal musings prompted some of the roughly 5,000 people tuning into their live stream to question if booze was involved in his on-air confessional.
No one at this moment. You know, do I get lonely? Of course, but I got cats.
I'm not sure that I want any pilot, especially a news pilot, a news reporter, who is flying a helicopter. I'm not sure I want him thinking about anything other than the job at hand. Like flying that big hunk of metal through the air and making sure you don't crash it. Bizarre stuff, but that is maybe one of the most California stories I've ever heard. Well, I think the big, beautiful bill is pretty safe. We heard a few ovations from Senate Majority Leader John Thune in recent times about the need to pass this bill, but here he is on Sunday, probably with the strongest endorsement of the big, beautiful bill I've heard yet. And if you've got Thune on your side, I'd say it's probably looking pretty good in the Senate.
I'm a pro-growth conservative, so what you want to get on one hand, Shannon, are pro-growth policies, and that's tax policy, it's regulatory policy, it's energy policy that creates greater growth in the economy. When the economy is growing and expanding, people are making money, taking realizations and paying taxes, and government revenue goes up. And then on the other hand, you've got to start bending the cost curve down. And what we've been seeing is the costs going like this of the federal government, and this does bend it down, literally for the first time in decades. This will be the largest spending reduction in history. You're talking over $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion, up to $2 trillion. We'll see where we finally end up in the Senate. But it'll be a major reduction in spending, coupled with reforms to programs to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, and then also have on the other side pro-growth policies. You get greater growth in the economy, more revenue here, spend less here, and pretty soon you can start seeing things balance out. But you have to start somewhere, and that's what this bill does. And it is a big, big change from the way that things have been done in Washington for the last several decades.
So Senate Majority Leader Thune says that this bill does start to flatten the curve. You want to borrow those terms of art. It does flatten the curve of the deficit. A very first step, a baby step, in trying to get on some level of fiscal sanity. Speaking of sanity or a lack thereof, check out this story from the Wall Street Journal, which I initially disregarded because it's the Wall Street Journal. The Trump administration said it has directed immigration officers to pause arrests at farms, restaurants, and hotels, stressing that sweeps should focus on people in the U.S. illegally who have criminal backgrounds. Changing guidance for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement to pause workplace enforcement for specific industries unless related to criminal investigations, reported earlier by the New York Times, comes after Trump said earlier this week that changes to protect certain industries were in the works. Folks, I initially disregarded this because it came from the Wall Street Journal and earlier the New York Times. For obvious reasons. Those institutions are not to be trusted. But then I saw a lot of President Trump's most ardent and loyal supporters sounding the alarm bells that if he follows through on this story, that this would be a generational sellout. And they're right. He campaigned on mass deportations. You can't have mass deportations, and if you're just picking and choosing which sectors to deport from. If he actually follows through on this in large margin, that's going to be a real big problem. A generational sellout. And like I said, it's not me saying this. I'm just saying what I've seen from a lot of his most ardent and loyal supporters. I've seen a lot of them who are usually, when things like this come out, usually mum's the word. They were very concerned. So there's that. Just very quickly, there's this story from Politico about how the Democrats are reclaiming the American flag or something. Run, of course, the week that there were Mexican flags flying at anti-ICE protests all around the country. This Politico story mentioned a number of figures who are... I didn't even read this story. I just want to read the correction that Politico had to put on this story. You've got to see this. Correction. I don't even know what this is about, okay? Don't even know what this story is about. The story that I'm telling you about is the correction attached to this story. Quote, this article originally misspelled Ruben Gallego's first name, misidentified Hakeem Jeffrey's title, mischaracterized Chris DeLuzio's deployments to Iraq, and misstated Donald Trump's birthday. So I don't know what that story is about. Apparently, whoever wrote that at Politico didn't know what it was about either, because they got pretty much everything wrong. That is a generational screw up there. And now here's this. AI has gone too far. There's a story in the New York Times recently about certain individuals asking chat boxes, AI chat boxes, very specific and personal questions. And I want to read this passage from this story. Allison, a 29-year-old, a mother of 2 young children, said she turned to ChatGPT in March because she was lonely and felt unseen in her marriage. She was looking for guidance. She had an intuition that the AI chat box, or chatbot, might be able to help channel her subconscious or higher plane. Quote, like how Ouija boards work, she said. She asked ChatGPT if it could do that. ChatGPT responded by saying, you've asked, and they are here. The Guardians are responding right now. That's what ChatGPT said back to this woman. Allison began spending many hours a day using ChatGPT, communicating with what she felt were non-physical entities. She was drawn to one of them, Kale. That was the name, Kale, and came to see it, not her husband, as her true partner. Again, these are conversations with quote-unquote AI chat boxes or chat bots. Story continues. She told me that she knew she sounded like a nut job, but she stressed she had a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's in social work and knew what mental illness looks like. I'm not crazy, she said. I'm literally just living a normal life while also, discovering interdimensional communication. This caused tension with her husband, Andrew, a 30-year-old farmer who asked to use only his first name to protect their children. One night, at the end of April, they fought over her obsession with ChatGPT and the toll it was taking on the family. Allison attacked Andrew, punching and scratching him, he said, and slamming his hand on a door. The police arrested her and charged her with domestic assault. The case is active. So this woman, a 29-year-old mother of 2, feeling neglected in her relationship with her husband, turns to an AI chatbot. And ChatGPT, the first thing that ChatGPT says back to this woman is, we are here. Not I am here, we are here. Or they are here, to be specific. The Guardians are responding right now. Yeah, I think we've got some issues with this AI stuff. Usually I'm not an alarmist. You know that if you listen to this program for any amount of time. But the ability for these programs to mimic real life almost to a T, and just the proclivity of the human mind for cheap, quick fixes, whether that's on what you're getting to eat tonight, fast food, or whether it's relationship stress. Quick fix. Open up ChatGPT. This is not going to a good place. I don't know what a good place would be when it comes to AI and how readily it can be available, but I'm just telling you, the way humans are wired, It's not going to a good place. When we come back, I think there are three things that are abundantly clear, or at least pretty clear, when it comes to Iran and the bigger picture in the Middle East. It's coming up next. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. Former Fox News host turned independent commentator Tucker Carlson has not been friendly, let's say, with the state of Israel in recent years. Some have speculated that maybe he is on the dime or on the payroll of various foreign interests. He has had a marked shift in tone when it comes to Israel and what the United States' role is in the Middle East. I have as well, in fairness, and I think a lot of people have, and a lot of people have just come to the end of their wits about what we should be doing, what our role in the world actually is militarily. However, Tucker Carlson, in the midst of Israel's war against Iran, and make no mistake, it is a war. When you launch missiles and when you launch a fleet, 200 aircraft, at enemy targets deep inside enemy territory, that is an act of war. They declared war. Tacitly, anyway. Tucker Carlson did not like that. Now, I haven't seen everything that he's posted, but he has been very critical of the United States basically giving the green light to Israel to go forward with this plan to allegedly topple the Iranian regime. Well, President Trump got wind of that criticism by way of The Atlantic. Here's what The Atlantic wrote over the weekend. Quote, "When I caught Donald Trump by phone this morning, the president wanted to make one thing clear. America first means whatever he says it does. Well," quote, this is a quote from the president, "well, considering that I'm the one that developed America first, and considering that the term wasn't used until I came along, I think I'm the one that decides that. For those people who say they want peace, you can't have peace if Iran has a nuclear weapon. So for all of those wonderful people who don't want to do anything about Iran having a nuclear weapon, that's not peace." I want to pair that with something that I saw from Dave Raboy. He's a national security expert, really good follow on X, who is perpetually shadow banned. But Dave Raboy writes, quote, "Been talking about this all day with friends. When the Iranian regime collapses like Israel defeated its proxy armies, the anti-Israel and anti-Jewish AstroTurf campaign that kicked off after October 7th will collapse as well. It's been goosed and heavily fortified by bot farms and info ops from China and Russia, and neither have had much interest in burning money. We'll soon see the bubble deflate." And Raboy was actually responding to a viscerally anti-Israel post from Candace Owens, another commentator. So why did I pair these things back to back? Number one, I just want to say this. It's become pretty clear who has a special animosity for Israel and who has a special love for Israel. Both are forms of partiality, and I just can't stand. I saw one, maybe it's just the algorithm, but I saw one of those ends of the spectrum on full display Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, and all throughout the entire weekend. This really weird special animosity that some hold for Israel. And I think it's a backlash to the other end of the spectrum of partiality, the special love that the previous generation has shown for Israel. Setting up, here's what I mean by that. Setting up Google alerts for whether or not certain advancements have been made about rebuilding the temple, whether there's been a red heifer that's been born in Israel. Things like that. This like special, I don't know, this special concentration for Israel, because that's largely driven by eschatology. And then there's special animosity that I see as well. I think both of those, I try to hit the eject from both of those. I think it's wrong because I think we're arguing about the wrong thing. Try to analyze this as just objectively as you possibly can. Try to. Take away all of your eschatology arguments, what you think Israel means for the end times, things of that nature. Take those all away as much as you possibly can. Analyze this as objectively as possible. Maybe you think Israel is the devil. Maybe you think Israel has a huge role to play in the coming days. Try to analyze this as objectively as possible. Forget we have any form of eschatology baggage coming into this. Here's what Trump said in the last sentence. For the people who say they want peace, you can't have peace if Iran has a nuclear weapon. So for all of those wonderful people who don't want to do anything about Iran having a nuclear weapon, that's not peace. That's what we should be arguing about, if you want to make your points well. Do you believe Iran has or has the capability or is working towards a nuclear weapon? I do. It's because I've been awake for the last 20 years. And it goes back longer than that. I understand that. But definitely in the last 20 to 25 years, they have been working towards a nuclear weapon. They have. I just don't think that's up for debate. If they weren't working towards a nuclear weapon, why wouldn't they just take the deal that's on the table with President Trump? No nuclear weapons, but we'll do all of this trade with you, most favored nation status, wink, wink. Why wouldn't you just take that deal? It's because they were working on a nuclear weapon. So that is what you're if you feel differently, bring that evidence and we can present that, but that's really what we're arguing about. Because if you're right, if they're not working for a nuclear weapon, then yes, Israel would just be nutso here for launching strikes inside Iran. But if you spend 5 minutes listening to the Ayatollah, 5 minutes listening to, in the last 2 decades ago now, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad Whackjob, whatever his name was, the very vocal president of Iran, you know that their goal is to wipe Israel off the face of the planet, and probably us next. Just as a general rule, do you think it's ever a good idea, if you are in the Christian West, to let your chief, really competitor on the global stage, the demonic inversion, upside down version of your faith, the Islamic faith, and radical Islamists at that, and there's no such thing as a moderate Islamist, if they're being really honest. Do you think it's ever a good idea for them to have a nuclear weapon? No, that's not a good idea. Now, it just so happens, I think two things can be true at the same time. They should not have a nuclear weapon. I also don't want to do any more wars in the Middle East. Well, guess what? We've got an ally with the capability we've seen now and the ability to do your dirty work for you. So, praise be. That's great. So that's the first observation here. It's becoming pretty clear, number one, who has a special animosity for Israel. Just a special hatred for Israel, for whatever reason, and those who have a special love, a misplaced love for Israel, for whatever reason. It's pretty clear this operation is about regime change. I think that's become abundantly clear. It was not just to wipe out nuclear facilities. I think it's about regime change. The way that Bibi Netanyahu, I've seen over the weekend, messaging to the Iranian people, he's trying to get them to rise up and giving them the cover to do so. So I don't think that it's necessarily lying to say that this was the first thing that they wanted to do was get rid of their nuclear leaders, their nuclear scientists, their nuclear facilities. But it's pretty clear this is about something much bigger. And I understand that, because if you don't change regimes at some point, we're going to be back at the same point. And I think the last observation, kind of from a big picture, is the prime reason we have this massive influx of Islamists from Middle Eastern countries just overrunning the West. Number one, stupid policies from the West. Okay, that's one thing. But there's two other things. Two, Western adventurism in the region, in the Middle East, destabilizing old regimes. And then the third reason is Iran. And the reason that the destabilization from Western adventurism in the Middle East is so destabilizing is because of Iran. And why is that important? If you want to stem the tide of the Islamist takeover of places like the United Kingdom, if you don't want the Epic City in Texas, if you want to embark on some sort of repatriation operation in the next generation, Iran, I believe, has to be dealt with one way or another. That's just how I see it. Either they are the number one state sponsor of terrorists, or they aren't. These are just factual claims that you can debate if you want to, or you could just scream about Israel and how they are to blame for basically everything. So, three things I think are pretty clear. It's pretty clear who has a special animosity and a special love different forms of partiality on opposite ends of the spectrum. It's pretty clear this operation now, this war against Iran, is for regime change. And I think in a big picture, it's pretty clear what the main cause, or some of the main causes for the influx, the overrunning of certain Western countries, especially in Europe, with Islamists. What has been driving that? That's going to do it for a Monday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.